Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, good morning to you. It is Monday, the 16th of 15th?
15th.
I don't know what latitude I'm in, let alone the date. As a surprise this morning, Chris Potter is joining us. I got back to the United States yesterday evening and was sitting at O'Hare Airport waiting to be transported back to the Burg. And I started seeing tweets that the aforementioned Mr. Potter was tweeting from Freedom Corner.
Yeah.
This was last evening.
Yeah, last night.
Okay. And I was really taken by them. I mean, first of all, congratulations on the great tweets, because you were,
that will be my journalistic legacy.
Well,
I'm sure.
I gotta tell you, journalistically, this is uncharted territory in some respects, and you were managing to fit, it was very evocative, I thought.
Yeah.
We're just jumping right in, obviously. So tell us what the one that got me was you said that you'd been to.
Yeah.
You've covered a gazillion protests, marches, but there was something about this one last night that.
Yeah, in that the people who were participating didn't really know going into it, I think, what they were going to do. And what ended up happening, there were two events yesterday. One was an afternoon event at Mellon Park in Shadyside. And then this was the 6 p.m. Freedom Corner thing, which was there were protests in cities all across the country at 6 p.m. So this was part of that. And I would say more than 200 people showed up at the event that I covered, the 6 p.m. one. And as you say, I've covered a bunch of these. And what really struck me is there's this sort of spontaneous give and take amongst the protesters themselves. You had like mothers and their daughters, there's a mother and adult daughter standing alongside. There were a handful, about a half dozen young women, young black women mostly, who basically formed the core of this thing. And they just sat down. There had been sort of an open mic thing, and people were talking and, sort of sharing their feelings and sort of venting. And then these women basically sat down in Center Avenue and just said, "We're not moving." And there was these discussions going on about, should we do this, should we not do this? And there was it came home to me. There's a mother and her adult daughter talking, and the daughter had a child of her own, and the mother was like, "Don't sit out there."
These the women pictured in the.
This is somebody else. Yeah, no, there were these great photos. This is somebody else, and the mother was telling her daughter, "I don't want you sitting out there. You've got a kid to take care of," and her daughter said, "Well, Malcolm X had 5 children to take care of," and her mother said, "Yeah, but he had a wife watching out for those kids, and you don't have anybody." And it struck me, you don't have like a backstop. You
she
don't
was
have
saying
like
if you get arrested, who's
going to take care of these kids? And it struck me that so many of the anti-war protests or whatever were by kids. And I don't want to get into like a whole they were trust fund Marxist kinds of things, but they were obviously folks who didn't necessarily have these same kind of responsibilities. And it was sort of fascinating just watching this, these protesters and this community kind of work out what's the thing to do here. How do we balance this with the fact that we all got to go back to work tomorrow and we've got kids to take care of? And then and even they're sitting in the street and they're arguing amongst themselves, and the argument is respectful, but it's impassioned. And you've got these older protesters, kind of saying, "Come on, sisters, let's get up. We don't need to get arrested." That's what they want from us. That's what one of the people. That's what they want. That's what these police want from us.
Okay.
And then the young women saying, "Well, what else are we going to do? we've all been to these before. Nothing ever changes. Nothing ever happens.
Talking doesn't do it.
Yeah, and there was just this very impassioned speech by one of the women who I think is in that photograph, Zela Maguni, and she was just, almost screaming at the top of her lungs about, how much longer are we going to let this go on? Our own bodies are criminalized, essentially. They can come and they can do this to us whenever they want. The police can, put you up against a wall in our communities whenever they want on almost any pretext.
She's saying that being a black person.
Just being that actually just having a black body is itself in a way is, probable cause, a crime in and of itself. One of the women I talked to, who I don't think was in that photograph, she had told me, she said, look, a while back, we had police basically raid our home looking for somebody who'd lived there 3 years ago. And, and she said, it's not even, we can't even walk down the street. You can't even be asleep in our own home. This was at 5:30 in the morning. And she's like, I just want to know what we can do that's right. I can't even be asleep in my own home without having these kinds of encounters.
So, I mean, if there was an emotion that was, you could feel there. I mean, I see just on this, it's a picture we're talking about on page 4 of today's
Tribune Review.
No, this is the Post-Gazette.
Oh, it is the Post-Gazette, sorry. Yeah.
And I see sorrow.
Yeah.
I see anger.
Yeah.
I see maybe determination.
Yeah, that was all there, and a lot of frustration.
And frustration.
Yeah.
This sense of this weariness. Like, what the heck?
There were a couple speakers who got up there, and again, this is like this sort of spontaneous give and take. There were a couple speakers who got up there and basically said, we need to defend ourselves. We need to arm ourselves. There was a guy who just said, every one of us who has the ability to go get a firearm should do it, and we should train ourselves in how to use it. So that A, we are not the victims of the Zimmerman of the world. B, so we can police our own communities so the police don't have an excuse to come in. And C, to defend ourselves against cops. And I mean, and what was interesting was then you had people getting up and saying, that isn't, that isn't the way, that isn't the way. And the guy who said that, the guy who was sort of the leading advocate of this was also, interestingly, a half hour, 45 minutes later, one of the older people saying to the younger folks, let's get out of the street. Huh. So in a way, this sort of, it was just, again, it was fascinating. The other thing that was interesting too, is the extent to which, I mean, most of the people at this protest were white, I would say, probably 2/3 or 3/4 of them. But as the evening wore on, it really became the black community and the black participants basically owning this thing. And while there were white people there in solidarity, I mean, they were literally marginalized in the sense of being kind of, and that's kind of how I felt too. Good. And they were sort of there in a support thing, but it wasn't about them at all. No. And I think, there's a lot of talk about how we are all Trayvon Martin, and speakers who are both black and white said that. But I think we all kind of know.
No, white people are
that's not really true.
Right.
I mean, things can happen, and the system is stacked against the working class and the poor, but but there's a difference. There's just a whole different level of experience that we're talking about here. And I just thought, again, I have not seen that often. Usually, if you see sort of a march, or whatever, even if there's participation across a broad spectrum, it's usually the white people who are sort of front.
So you were really moved by this.
I was, and I don't know that anything's gonna happen as a result of it. I mean, I think everybody there was pretty clear on the challenges facing, going forward. And at the end of the night, I didn't get out of there. I got up there at, a little before 6, and I didn't get home till probably about 11:30. And the last thing they did was around 11:15, and they all got into a circle, about 20 folks at this point, who had stuck it out, and about 20 of them all in a big circle, sort of holding hands in the middle of Center Avenue. And they kind of read a statement, and it was, we're against the criminalizing of black bodies. That's what needs to stop. And they planned for another a rally press event at noon this Wednesday at the county courthouse. So mark that in your calendars. But there was a sense at the end of it, kind of like it just kind of petered out in a way. And we should say that Rochelle Brackney, the police commander here, who made the decision, and this is really important.
Beautifully handled.
Yeah, and I've known Commander Brackney from back when she was a lieutenant, and my first encounter with her was also diffusing a protest, in different circumstances, but a very similar approach. Her kind of thing was, look, people are hurt, they're confused, they're angry, and the best thing we can do is just let them vent. And so the cops just held back. And of course, it was also because it was a Sunday evening. There wasn't a lot of traffic. It was easy to reroute people.
But another commander making another choice.
Yeah, might have done something different. And so it was just that, and there are people who kind of said, look, this is a blessing that it happened to be Commander Brackney, who was basically on call that night to kind of handle this stuff. She knew these women. She knew these. Well, I
have the exact quotes here. She knelt down with the women who were sitting in Center Avenue.
Yeah.
And understand, set the scene. There are police cars. The police are on both sides.
They're hanging back, but they are within a block.
And they have twice asked them to disperse.
Yes. Very politely.
Easy.
Yeah, the first announcement was, "Excuse me." And it was this is the timeline. And they said, you're going to get your next warning at 7:45 and da-da-da-da-da. But yes, yeah.
Okay. So the commander comes and she knelt in front of the group and told them that they could continue their protest. She said she would leave a police car at each end of the block, and she would tell the other police units to go back into service. Mm-hmm. And she told these women, mostly women, that you are welcome to stay. And here's a direct quote. "I would love that we sit here and talk about it and come up with a plan, a sustainable plan." And then one of the women sitting there says to her, "Sister, I know you.
Yeah.
I took hip-hop aerobics with you. But sister, my question is, can you really expect us to put our trust in the police?
Yeah.
We can't." And Brackney is also quoted here as then saying, "We're going to do things peacefully. We're going to do things sustainably. That means not just for the moment, not just because it's emotional. And here's what I want from all our young ladies, and here's what I'm going to suggest. Every time we have a homicide in our communities that's committed by one of us, that we go to that same place and we sit there, that we hold that community accountable the same way that we want to hold Seminole, Florida accountable."
Yeah. Yep.
I think
I was there. That's exactly how that went down.
Darn impressive.
Yeah, she was. And I was there, and that's exactly how that went down. That's a completely faithful account of that interaction. And she didn't stay. She wasn't there the whole time. She had other, things to do in the city that night. But she was checking in on folks regularly and talking to them, and this sort of give and take, that was very honest and respectful. And, again, I'll just say that this is the power of people. Sometimes wonder. I was on KDK a few weeks ago, and with Joanna Dovin, who's had a guest gig doing a talk radio show, the former spokesperson for the mayor, and she was kind of like, well, what's the point of all this talk about diversity?
And we should say, wait a minute, she's married to Mike Huss,
the public safety director. Yeah,
I don't know.
And she said, why do we worry so much about diversity and policing? And honestly, I think this was
there. It is.
This is an example. This is somebody who she polices the north side. That's the zone she commands. But she goes to church with and I asked her, how do you know these folks? And she said, I go to church with them. She does the
hip hop aerobics.
These are folks who know each other face to face. So as we talk about residency requirement and all that stuff, granted, I think the problem with residency is just that police don't live in the neighborhoods that most need this kind of community. These kind of community ties, but there's an intangible benefit to that stuff. But if you were there on Center Avenue last night, you knew that it was very, very real. It's a very real benefit to having an officer who has that kind of community tie and community credibility.
Well, I will say that here's a woman quoted too who says, Brandy Fisher, President and CEO of the Alliance for Police Accountability, said she hadn't expected that this would end with a sit-in. And then she said that she was proud of and respected those sitting.
Yep.
And she was proud of the police response.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a good night.
Good night for Pittsburgh.
I mean, a terrible cause,
right?
A terrible reason to be there, but the outcome, I think, just could not have been more affirming. Well,
the pictures just break your heart. Especially, I mean, you look at the pictures of it's the young black children and this reality that they're still living in a country that criminalizes their skin, in which it's true, it's probable cause to kill.
Yeah.
A reasonable man in Florida can be thought totally, there's no problem with him feeling threatened upon encountering a black male. And if he feels threatened, he can kill him.
Yeah, and apparently get away with it.
Yes.
By a jury.
No, that's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean,
How does it stand, too, that the jury is all white?
I thought
one
there was
Hispanic.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Well, I mean, look, I don't. Here's what I think about that. I mean, there was a defense attorney who just happened to be at this event last night, and we talked quite a bit about the case when we were, because there were long periods of time where really nothing was going on, and we talked quite a bit about. Do we have a call? Okay, go ahead.
Let me interrupt you.
Sure.
Okay, caller, go ahead, please.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Hey, I just want to say two things. If this Zimmerman was so scared, why in the hell did he get in his car and roll up the windows and leave?
Yeah.
And another thing, he didn't have to shoot the man and the young kid in the heart. He could have shot him in the leg. He could have shot him in the arm. He had a plan. He wanted to kill him.
Well,
we'll see him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're talking to this defense attorney.
Yeah, so, and I asked him about what he thought, and he'd followed the case somewhat closely, and this is also a guy, I should say, who's fairly a liberal guy involved in a lot of liberal causes. And I said, and he was sort of bemused, shocked, dismayed by how poor the prosecution's case was. And and I kind of asked him, what do you do you think they kind of pulled their punches here? Do you think they deliberately put out a bad case? And he just said, I think they had a bad case to put out. And the reason is, a big part of the reason is because of police behavior that night.
That's right.
I mean, to me, if you boil this case down to one thing, it's they drug tested the victim. They didn't drug test the alleged perpetrator. Not alleged. Everybody knew he shot him.
Right.
I mean, if I went out tonight and I hit somebody with my car, whether it was my fault or not, if they just stumbled into the street and there's nothing I could do, I would be tested for drug and alcohol in my system, just pro forma, not to accuse me of anything, just because that's what you do.
And certainly
and that wasn't done. And they didn't do any of the stuff, that you expect a police officer to do at a crime scene, really. And so by the time it gets to the jury,
there was a sense that he was almost one of them.
That was certainly his way of kind of ingratiating himself. Right.
He'd been on the phone with them. This was a brotherhood of sorts.
Right. So I mean, I have some sympathy for that jury, which is that by the time this case got into their hands, it had just already.
Well, the sympathy for the jury is also that they were dealing with this law again essentially allows. I remember when these laws started passing, and I realized what they were, what they allowed.
Yeah.
That in fact it allowed. It was. I said it's a shoot a black man law.
Yeah.
And go
and even your law
go home free.
Even your pro-gun law and order types, I think, should be able to recognize that this is unintended consequences. I mean, among the people who have been exonerated, or at least that have avoided successful prosecution by Stand Your Ground in Florida, have been like drug dealers shooting other drug dealers in turf wars. So that's who, that's also who is availing themselves of this defense down there. People who are a blight on their communities as well. So
if you live in a country in which a huge percentage of people find black men frightening in some way, if they're walking down the street and there's a black man coming toward them, that they have this feeling of Oh, something like that. And I'm telling you, this is a huge percentage of America. These laws allow that person, and these states also allow these easily frightened people to be carrying loaded guns.
Yeah, right.
This is shoot a black man free law. How many more black men are going to die because of this law?
That was the question last night. Asked more than once.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, right. Although I must admit, when I was in Scotland, it was so white.
Yeah.
It was
sure.
so blindingly white.
Yeah. Even among white people, Scottish people are white.
People. And you know what? There's a picture. I'll show it to you. So I was at a marvelous little dinner with some Scottish families and just having a delightful time with their two little daughters, not 16 and 12-year-old girls. We were sitting together. We were laughing, and their mother took a picture of us. And she said, "Oh, I love this picture." I said, "Well, let me see." It looks like these two white, beautiful children, and this wizened brown old lady. That is how much the skin color, my skin color.
Yeah.
I'm a little tan now. It was unbelievable. They're so white, it's unbelievable. You can see through their skin.
They're not white, they're translucent.
They're right, they're ethereal. So it's just really weird. And their eyes are so blue that you can see. They're a blue you never saw before. Yiko. Them are Caucasians. Well, not really.
No. What we learned up in Boston is true Caucasians actually don't look that white.
Yeah, Caucasians look more like me.
Yeah.
I mean, darker. Oh, God. Yeah, welcome back to the... And I have to say that one of my last sites leaving Pittsburgh, I took the 28X.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it comes downtown here. Oh. And as we rounded the bend right here outside on Smithfield, it makes a turn. And I was looking and saying, "Oh, goodbye, Pittsburgh. I'll see you in 8 days or something." This, 9-foot orange stuffed animal walked amidst all these people. There was all of a sudden this big, and I thought, Pittsburgh, the furries. The first thing I saw, well, not quite, after clearing customs last night, and they spit you back out into America. This is at O'Hare in Chicago. The first thing I saw, there's a McDonald's positioned right there at the airport. They spit you out, America. And then it's before you, in between where you get spit out and where you collect, some.
Right. Welcome to America. Here's your burger.
Yeah, you want fries with that? Okay, well, just some cultural references. Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to reading what you write about.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to have the ability to really tell this story the way I want to in 600 words in the print edition. I'm going to try to whip up something online
on your blog, and so people should look.
Yeah, and I'll tweet that out when it's up.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good work.
All right. Thank you.
Good work. Hope we'll see you Wednesday too.
Yeah.
Good. Ho 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 ho. All right. Thanks. Let's get a break out of the way, and then we'll be back, or I'll be back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Sewickley Med Spa is proud to announce the availability of the revolutionary Tri-Polar Apollo treatment in Pittsburgh. As seen on Dr. Oz, Tri-Polar Apollo will reduce wrinkles, tighten and firm skin on your face, neck, abdomen, and thighs. This is a non-surgical, pain-free lunchtime procedure. Call today for a free consultation, 412-259-8628, or online at sewickleymedspa.com.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual City Guide magazine is available now. Pick up one today for a special look at the unique history of Pittsburgh. Plus, the most complete guide of restaurants, drinking establishments, nightlife, festivals, exhibits, entertainment, and culture in the burg. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania, and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
All righty, welcome back. Gigi has asked about this Wednesday rally that Chris referred to, another rally on Wednesday. As I heard it, my understanding was in front of the City County Building, Grant Street. But I don't know if he said there was a time. Is it at noon? Noon or 6? I don't know. Try to find out for you, Gigi. Keep your eyes peeled. Wow. You know, I did not watch this trial. I know it was covered, beginning to end. I couldn't. It was one of those stories from the minute it happened that I found so unbearable that I couldn't, bear to watch, to relive in minute detail. I thought, here's someone who has it right. This is a pastor, actually, the current pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, where of course, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was, and I believe his father before him. And here's what that Reverend Raphael Warnock said yesterday. Trayvon Benjamin Martin is dead because he and other black boys and men like him are seen not as a person, but a problem. And that's it. Not as a person. And I would argue by many people, not as a person, but as a threat. More than even a problem, a threat. And I don't know how we cleanse our hearts of this. There's not a one of you listening now who do not know and love people who are frightened of black men. And these can be obviously good people. You would not generally call them racist because they don't ever say anything overtly racist. They might even have friends who are black. But at heart, in their core, there is this fear. And fear, when people, this is as basic as our reptilian brains, right? Fear begets immediate response often, and it's often not a well-considered reaction. Fight or flight. And if in America, as in America, where we're all told that we live in a dangerous place. And where do you think that sense of danger comes from a lot? I know on the right they talk about government, but a lot of it too is, again, unsaid. It's black people. And yet, our Supreme Court, right, the Roberts Court, just a few weeks ago, I think the Chief Justice himself wrote it, that we're in a post-racial America. There's no need for silly things like the Voting Rights Act. I say this as this week, Pennsylvania's extraordinarily onerous voting ID law goes back for its second round in court. And the basis of that law, the raison d'etre of that law is to keep black people in large part, in urban centers, Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, from voting. We already do a real good job of keeping black men from voting. We imprison them at a rate that is awesome for crimes that white people don't get imprisoned for. Then they lose. Once they're convicted, we tell them they cannot vote. If you look at what we've done, oh yes, we freed the slaves. How many years later are we? Where are we now? And this one is just the latest. So when you look at these women's faces sitting there on Center Avenue last night and you see, try to read. I mean, it's a Rorschach test. Look at those faces and read what they tell you. Read what they're feeling. And try to imagine what it is like still to be black in America. I say we cut, Florida's like a what? It's like a vestigial piece of real estate. We could just excise it and let it float off. It can maybe float into Hispaniola, take up with the Cubans and the Dominicans, and they can all be happy together. Just cut it off. I saw somebody saying, if you want to send Florida, and it is Florida with its laws, with these onerous shoot black men on sight laws. You don't go to Disney World. You don't go to Universal Studios. You don't do Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Fort Myers. You don't do Tampa. You don't. You don't. This is what you do them. You take your money someplace else. And this should be pointed out, and it has been by many people. The judicial system is ill-named because it makes us think, because of that word judicial coming from the same root or from the root justice, that it's about justice. And it's not. And you don't, I would imagine if you're 3 hours into first year law school, you're probably disabused of that notion. It is not about justice. It's about these man-made laws, and in a state like Florida and in a state like Pennsylvania, these men who make these laws are not wise men. And their laws are not wise laws. And then a jury has to deal with the law, not what their hearts tell them, the law. And as I suggest, this law that was in play in this trial is a threat to the very lives of black men. And that's why Trayvon Martin is dead, and George Zimmerman walks and will be, if he hasn't already, be given his gun back. I read somewhere a poignant comment by someone who said that Trayvon Martin now lies under the ground that he could not stand on. Thank you, because I did not follow the trial. I'm being told that the defense, excuse me, actually did not use the stand your ground law, which was that would be a surprise, maybe a very smart move. Who knows? I don't know. They used a self-defense argument. That's all it took, a self-defense argument. I consider the stand your ground law as under the general heading of self-defense laws, because it is about defending. If you feel threatened, you do not have to flee. You can stand your ground and shoot. No one in their right mind would pass such a law. We all know people. Most people I know I would not trust to make a snap, wise judgment based on their perception of how endangered they are. Exactly because of sort of innate reptilian prejudices. And then it's just has always struck me that most people seem to be inordinately fearful. Oh, well, I should just shut up, huh? This from an AP report. Sorry, we have a caller. Caller, hello? From an AP report. Hi. Please.
I'd like to talk to Lynn about the Trayvon Martin case.
Yes, you're talking to Lynn.
Hi.
Just turn your audio down. Turn your audio down.
I'm trying to right now. Hold on.
Turn your audio down.
I'm trying to right now. Hold on.
Turn your. Hello?
Lynn, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can barely hear you, but anyhow, my comment is this. I mean, a very sad day in America. Very sad. But the six-panel jury, I don't understand this. My wife says that that's okay for that county in Florida, and I never heard of a six-panel jury. I mean, what's about that?
You mean you're expecting a bigger jury?
Well, I always thought that you got judged on 12 jurors.
Me too. But again, it's Florida. I don't know.
Well, that shouldn't make any difference.
No, I guess every state sets its own laws. I don't understand the six. I was surprised by 6 jurors, too. But maybe for certain cases, that's all that's required. Like for shooting black boys.
Huh. Well, and the other point is, I'm sick of these jurors being padded. Like, okay, 6 women. It was a male-on-male crime. What's wrong with at least 3 women and 3 men?
I don't know. What's wrong with a black person on there, too?
Exactly, or a Mexican.
If you put one... I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I have no answer.
The last thing I'm going to throw up for you, and God bless you for what you do, is if there was no gun on Zimmerman, what would the outcome have been? Someone would have had to have been beaten up. Exactly. And whatever more than likely they wouldn't have died.
I agree.
So I mean, I don't understand. What are they trying to say? It's like you and Potter said. It's okay to kill a black person. Law.
That's what
exactly what it is. I'll hang up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the call. Laura writes, it's not just black men that Florida doesn't like. Florida also doesn't like Hispanics. Basically, Florida only likes white people. And if you talk to true Floridian white people, they usually don't hesitate to tell you that. Well, I'll take your word for it, Laura, since I really don't know any true Floridian white people. But I'll tell you this. When I talk about this innate fear of black people, that sits so intransigently in the hearts of white people. It sure as heck ain't just white people in Florida. It's everywhere. It's where whites live and don't live around blacks. Usually if you go to small towns in the Midwest where they don't know black people, or the town, I grew up in a town in which there was one black family, a town of tens of thousands. People don't know black people, and consequently, what you don't know is often fearful to you. There was a great quote, and I've forgotten it, and I've lost it, that Martin Luther King said, and it was about that, how separation, this is why he said integration was so important, how separation yields ignorance, and how of the other, and how ignorance yields fear, and how fear yields to violence. And so, as Chris said, he can be on a big radio station here and be asked by the host, whose husband is the chief public safety director in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, what do we need all this diversity? People still don't get it. And there is okay, I'll take a break. I'll take a break, and you know what? I'll shut up. I think I've said what I can say for somebody who's relatively ignorant of the detail of the trial, but because I didn't follow it, and this was not a big story in the Scottish newspapers, I'll tell you. I didn't even see it. The only story I saw there were two stories I saw from the United States that were covered, and one actually, and it made Americans look like fools and racists. That was the story about the Asiana.
Oh my God.
The unbelievable story of the TV station in San Francisco, giving the crew names. And I have to tell you, there is a sense over there that America is filled with fools. But then we sort of think the same thing, too. Okay, I'll take a break. We'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Sign up for our weekly newsletter to hear about new deals first. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it. But now your parents are becoming energy efficient. They could save hundreds of dollars a year and take you to the fair next year.
I want to go now.
Oh, I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay. Oh, man. And now to something lighter. Two obituaries. You know how much I love obituaries. And one is an obituary that I was very unhappy to see, and it happened, I guess, the day I left. I was unable to comment on it. And I knew this man, and I really, really adored him. And that is, I just want to note the passing of Bishop Anthony Bosco. Excuse me, of the Greensburg Diocese. I knew him long ago as I was a young reporter, and he was. I mean, you're going to interview the bishop, and you get. I don't know. Maybe only Jews get freaked. I just okay. I'm going to interview the bishop, and you're on your best behavior, and sort of. I think I was a little stiff. And he was the easiest, funniest. He could have been a stand-up comedian. He was that funny. I ended up just laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing with him. And God gave him a good death, and well done in this case. He passed away in his house, sitting in his favorite chair, with his dog at his feet, watching a Pirates game. Oh. And that is how he was found, and that's how he would have wanted to go. But I got to tell you, when it comes to the bishops of the Catholic Church, we sometimes are very critical here on this program, and we speak of them in this very generalized sense. And yet there are people, in this case, like Anthony Bosco, who was always way ahead of them, and always humanistic, and always empathetic, and he was a liberal at heart, I'll tell you that. He co-authored in 1987 a statement on AIDS in which, and this was for the bishops in the U.S., and in his statement, he said that there was a place for the use of condoms in preventing this scourge. That statement, of course, made its way to Rome, where it was ripped apart, hammered, and you can bet Bishop Bosco's rise in the church hierarchy stopped. He never disavowed it. No matter how often the popes after that came and went to Africa, where it was epidemic, and still would say condoms could not be used. By the way, the bishop, the cardinal that denounced his report was a guy who headed the Vatican's Office of, Doctrinal Truths or something. That cardinal was named Joseph Ratzinger. He, of course, would become Pope Benedict the 16th. In 2002, Bosco was quoted as saying, "I haven't changed my opinion on it one bit." He says, if you persuade sexually active carriers of the AIDS virus to be abstinent, you don't get anywhere with them if you try to persuade them. Well, then, in the name of God, at least get them not to spread the infection by allowing them to use condoms. This is Bishop Bosco. Some other things he said. He advocated a new translation of the Mass that would use gender-neutral terms, meaning that instead of just saying brothers, he would say brothers and sisters. Again, Rome rejected Bosco's ideas. And when asked why he thought Rome was not inclined to agree with him, he said, just like Bosco would, I think it's the F word. I think it's the F word, feminism, that frightens them. He was among the first bishops in the United States to adopt a zero-tolerance policy for priests who molest minors. Yeah. He's a great guy. He was a great guy. Bishop Anthony Bosco, may he rest in peace. He earned it. He truly made the world a little bit better in his time here. Thank you, Milton, who sent me the quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. This is it. Thank you. Men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. That's it. Thank you. That's it. Dr. King said that in 1958. He's talking about why we have to stop separating people, stop the segregation. People must be able to know each other, to communicate with each other, so that they don't fear each other. Milton gives me another quote, Dr. King. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important. Well, on the other hand, I agree that a law cannot make a man love someone, but there are laws that can make it very easy for that man to kill that which he doesn't love because he fears. Thank you for that. I will keep it. I will save it. I will embroider a pillow with it on. First, I have to learn how to embroider, but I will. It's that important, that quote, because I think it's all just bang, right there. I'm trying to see if, for some reason, my mail is all screwed up and I cannot tell what's coming in and what's going. Okay. Another obit. This is from today's New York Times. You probably don't know her, and I'm probably about to not pronounce her name correctly, but I'll give it my best, and it's Nadezhda Popova. Where's the accent on these Russian names? Popova or Popova? I think it's Popova. But then it was Gorbachev, wasn't it? Someone can let me know. It's Popova, 91 years old. Okay. This woman was, in World War II, one of the women that the Nazis truly feared. She was Soviet. She was called, as were the other women who did what she did, the night witches. And the Germans were scared to death of these women. And what did the night witches do? They got into biplanes made out of plywood and canvas. It's one step up from Tinker Toys. Yeah. They got into biplanes made of canvas and plywood. And three of them would go up together, always at night. They had no parachutes. They had no guns. They had no radios. They had no radar. They would go up blind in the dead of night, three women in these canvas and plywood biplanes. And two in the formation would maneuver and draw fire from the ground from the Nazis. While they're the decoys drawing fire, the third plane would swoop in, and each plane had one bomb secured under each of its plywood wings and would drop their bombs. Upon dropping the bomb, that pilot would again come around. The three would get in formation again so that another of the female pilots could be the bomber, and the former bomber becomes one of the people who is the decoy, who's drawing the fire. If one of these planes got hit by a tracer bullet, it would burn like a sheet of paper. She was in her teens. Most of these female pilots were in their teens or early 20s. They were called night witches by the Nazis because of the whooshing noise that their planes made in the night. And the Germans began to think of them as witches riding brooms. They wore men's uniform hand-me-downs. Their faces would freeze in the open cockpits. It's hard to imagine the courage. Hard to imagine. Their extraordinary skill and bravery prompted, of course, the Germans to spread rumors that these were not ordinary women, that these women were given special injections to make their eyes feline so that they could see in the dark. They were made otherworldly by the Germans because they were as frightening to them as witches on brooms with night vision. She was shot down several times. Somehow, always survived. She was named a hero of the Soviet Union. It's the highest honor in that country. The Gold Star, the Order of Lenin, the Order of the Red Star, all of it. And she was not alone. As I said, there were a number of these girls and very, very young women No parachutes, no radar, no covering. They flew 30,000 missions over 4 years. They dumped 23,000 tons of bombs on the Germans. The Germans so feared them that any German pilot who managed to down one of these little biplanes was immediately given. What's their big, the Iron Cross. Running out of time, just kind of check up on some of the emails. And yes, Chuck, I think I know this. And that's fantastic. Lynn, wondering if you saw that Pennsylvania Attorney General Kathleen Kane will not defend the state law that is essentially our Defense of Marriage Act that bans gay marriage, which is, I said, by the way, the Post-Gazette editorializes against her today for doing that, saying that whether she thinks it's a good law or not, that's her job as Attorney General, that she takes an oath to defend the laws of, but she thinks it's unconstitutional on its face, and absolutely agree with her. I love that she did that. On the other hand, she is this week will be in court defending the voting rights, the ID law that was the voter ID law that was passed, which I find one of the more appalling measures, and that is saying something, to pass the Pennsylvania legislature this year or last year. Okay, so anyway, Nadezhda Popova or Popova, good looking too. Brilliant. Can you imagine such courage? 91 years old. So 2 good people left the earth, Bosco and she, and a whole bunch of others. And, of course, Trayvon Martin, who never had a chance. He never had a chance to live his life, and he never had a chance after buying his Skittles, walking to that house, his father's girlfriend's house. Unbelievable. Sickening. Okay, well, boy, I feel like I'm back in America. For good and for ill. Tomorrow, I'll be back again, and yes, my sister Susan will be joining us. Wednesday, Potter. Thursday, Sokolowski. Yeah, full week of it. And I was going to say go Pirates, but we've got a lull. Go who? Go Alvarez. Yeah, Pedro's in the... Mm-hmm. Go Alvarez! Okay, there. Have a good one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.